You know that moment when you're sitting in your car, staring at your phone, watching it blow up with missed calls, and you just know your whole life is about to change? That was me 3 months ago, trying to figure out how to explain to my husband why I wasn't actually at work doing inventory like I'd told him. Looking back now, I still don't think I really did anything wrong. I mean, okay, maybe I shouldn't have lied about where I was, but honestly, Isaac drove me to it. Let me start from the beginning, and you tell me if I'm really the bad guy here. I'm Amanda, 32, living in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And up until recently, I thought I had this whole marriage thing figured out. Isaac and I had been married for 5 years, together for 7, and I guess you could say we were that couple everyone thought had it all together. You know the type? High school sweethearts who reconnected at a mutual friend's wedding, got married in a Pinterest-worthy barn ceremony, bought a cute little house in the suburbs. The whole 9 yards. Isaac works in medical equipment sales, and I'm a dental office coordinator. Not exactly glamorous jobs, but we were doing okay. We had our routine. Morning coffee together before work, weekend brunches at this local place that makes amazing Belgian waffles, movie nights where we'd argue over what to watch on Netflix. Normal stuff. Boring stuff. Looking back on it now, I guess that was part of the problem. Everything was just so predictable. Isaac would come home from his sales trips, tell me about whatever new machine he was pushing to hospitals, then zone out on the couch, playing video games, or watching YouTube videos about cars. He's obsessed with this old Mustang he's been fixing up in our garage for the past 2 years. Sometimes I think he loves that car more than me. Then there's the fact that he's been gunning for this regional sales manager position. Suddenly, every dinner conversation became about his latest presentation or which hospital might sign a big contract. I get it, ambition is great and all. But when was the last time he asked about my day? Or noticed I changed my hair? Or wanted to do anything besides order takeout and watch The Office for the millionth time? That's where James came in. He's this pharmaceutical rep who started coming to our office about 3 months ago. Tall, always wearing these perfectly fitted suits, and he actually listens when people talk. The first time we met, he remembered my name and brought me a coffee the next time he came in. Just because. When's the last time Isaac did something thoughtful like that? It started innocently enough. James would stop by the office every couple of weeks, and we'd chat while he waited to meet with the dentists. Just normal stuff, comparing notes about difficult clients, joking about office politics, sharing Netflix recommendations. Then he followed me on Instagram, and we started messaging about random things. Nothing inappropriate, just funny memes and comments about shows we both watched. Isaac never noticed I was smiling at my phone more. He was too busy with his sales reports and that stupid car. One night, I was laughing at something James sent me, and Isaac didn't even look up from his laptop to ask what was so funny. That's when it hit me. I couldn't remember the last time Isaac and I had a real conversation that wasn't about bills or house repairs or his job. James just got it, you know? He understood the frustration of dealing with entitled patients, or in his case, doctors. He actually cared about what I thought about things. When I mentioned I'd been thinking about going back to school for dental hygiene, he didn't immediately start talking about how expensive it would be, like Isaac did. Instead, he told me about his sister, who did the same thing, and offered to put me in touch with her. I started looking forward to his visits to the office. I'd make sure my makeup was perfect those days. Maybe wear one of my nicer outfits. It's not like I was trying to impress him or anything. I just wanted to look professional. And if I started taking my lunch break when I knew he'd be in the building, that was just convenient timing, right? The texting got more frequent. Sometimes we'd message late into the night, talking about everything and nothing. I'd tell Isaac I was reading or scrolling through TikTok. Little white lies, really. Nothing to hurt anyone. James would send me songs he thought I'd like, articles about dental industry news, funny stories about his day. It was nice to feel seen again, to have someone actually interested in my thoughts and opinions. I knew in the back of my mind that maybe I should tell Isaac about my new friend, but I also knew how he'd react. He'd get all weird and jealous. like he did when I wanted to go to my coworker's bachelorette party in Chicago. He'd probably say something about professional boundaries or whatever. Besides, there was nothing to tell, right? Just two colleagues being friendly. Then, James asked if I wanted to grab dinner after work to discuss some changes happening in the dental industry. He knew this great Italian place across town, much fancier than the chain restaurants Isaac always wanted to go to. I said yes before I even really thought about it. It was just dinner, just networking, really. That's what I told myself as I texted Isaac that I had to stay late at work for inventory. I didn't know then that one little lie would end up changing everything. But sitting in my car that night, watching my phone light up with Isaac's calls, I started to realize maybe I'd messed up bigger than I thought. But honestly, part of me didn't even care. And that probably says everything you need to know about where my marriage was at that point. The thing about James is that he made everything feel exciting again. Even just grabbing coffee during lunch breaks felt like a little adventure. He'd text me things like, "Rescue me from this boring meeting," or, "Your office's coffee is terrible, let me take you to get a real one." And I'd find myself making up excuses to take longer lunches or run errands for the office that somehow always coincided with his schedule. Isaac was so wrapped up in his work drama that he never even noticed. He'd come home late, talking non-stop about some new contract or another, barely even looking at the new highlights I got in my hair. Meanwhile, James noticed everything. He complimented my new shoes, remembered when I had important meetings, and actually asked follow-up questions about things I'd mentioned days before. I started spending more time getting ready in the mornings, picking out my outfits more carefully. I even bought this gorgeous red dress from Nordstrom that I definitely couldn't afford. But the way James looked at me when I wore it to work made it worth maxing out my credit card. Isaac didn't even notice it hanging in our closet. The texting got more frequent, more personal. James would send me good morning texts asking about my plans for the day. We'd chat during work, sharing inside jokes about customers or coworkers. Sometimes we'd text late into the night. I'd tell Isaac I was having trouble sleeping and would go downstairs to watch TV. But really I'd be messaging James about everything and nothing. I knew what I was doing wasn't exactly right. But it's not like anything physical was happening. We were just friends who happened to enjoy each other's company a lot, and maybe flirted a little. But that's normal, right? Everyone needs a little excitement in their life. When James suggested dinner that night, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. He knew this amazing Italian place downtown, not one of those chain restaurants Isaac always wanted to go to, but a real, sophisticated place with cloth napkins and a wine list longer than our takeout menu at home. Just a work dinner, I told myself as I picked out what to wear. Networking, I thought as I put on my favorite perfume. Building professional relationships, I justified as I texted Isaac about the fake inventory night. Looking back, I can see all the little steps that led to that moment. All the small choices that seemed so innocent at the time, but were actually leading me down a path I couldn't turn back from. But sitting in my car outside that restaurant, watching James walk toward me with that smile that made me feel like the most interesting woman in the world, I couldn't bring myself to care about consequences. I should have known better. Should have seen the signs. Should have realized that one lie always leads to another. But in that moment, all I could think about was how alive I felt, how seen, how appreciated. And isn't that what everyone wants, really? To feel like they matter to someone? So I silenced my phone, put on my best smile, and walked into that restaurant with James, telling myself that what Isaac didn't know couldn't hurt him. I had no idea then just how wrong I was about that. The restaurant was exactly like something out of a romance movie. Soft lighting, candles on every table, wine bottles lining the walls. James had reserved a quiet corner booth, and when the waiter came over, he ordered this expensive bottle of red wine without even looking at the price. Isaac would have had a heart attack. He's always going on about our budget and how we need to save for a down payment on a bigger house. The conversation just flowed naturally, like it always did with James. We talked about everything: our college days, our dream vacations, our career goals. He actually listened when I talked about wanting to go back to school, didn't immediately jump to, but how would we afford that? Like Isaac always does. James told me about his time living in Seattle, and I found myself imagining what it would be like to live somewhere exciting like that, instead of being stuck in Grand Rapids forever. 2 hours flew by like nothing. The wine probably didn't help. I'm usually pretty careful about drinking. But something about that night made me feel reckless. Free. Like I could finally be myself without worrying about someone judging my choices or telling me to be more responsible. I was in the middle of telling James this story about my wild spring break in Miami. Something I'd never tell Isaac. He gets weird about my party girl past, when I noticed I had 15 missed calls. My stomach dropped when I saw they were all from Isaac. There were texts too, getting progressively more worried. Hey, just stopped by your office to surprise you with dinner. Where are you? Amanda, the lights are off, and Sarah says you left hours ago. What's going on? Please call me back. I'm getting worried. Your car isn't in the parking lot. Where are you really? I felt the panic rising in my throat. I hadn't thought this through. Hadn't considered that Isaac might actually try to be thoughtful for once and bring me dinner. The irony wasn't lost on me. The one time he decides to be spontaneous and romantic is the night I'm out with another man. James must have noticed something was wrong because he reached across the table and put his hand on mine. Everything okay? He asked, and the genuine concern in his voice made my heart flutter. But it also made me feel guilty. Really guilty. For the first time that night, I started thinking about what I was actually doing. I pulled my hand away, making some excuse about needing to use the restroom. In the bathroom, I stared at myself in the mirror, trying to figure out what to do. I could tell Isaac the truth that I was out to dinner with a work colleague, but then I'd have to explain why I lied about inventory, and the texts and the lunches and everything else. My phone buzzed again. Isaac, I'm calling hospitals. Please just let me know you're okay. That's when it hit me how bad this looked. I wasn't just out to dinner with a friend. I was out to dinner with an attractive man, wearing my best dress, drinking expensive wine, while my husband was worried sick, thinking something terrible had happened to me. I splashed some water on my face and went back to the table. James had already paid the bill. Another thing Isaac would hate. He's weird about other men paying for anything for me. I made up some emergency about a pipe bursting at home, grabbed my purse, and practically ran to my car. The drive home was a blur. I tried to come up with explanations, excuses, anything that would make this look less terrible than it was. But every scenario I played out in my head just made me sound like exactly what I was. A liar. I pulled into our driveway at 10:45 p.m., 3 hours later than I normally get home. Isaac's car was there and all the lights were on. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get my key in the door. The moment I walked in, I knew everything was about to change. Isaac was sitting at our kitchen table, still in his work clothes, looking like he'd aged 10 years in one night. The look on his face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was worse. It was disappointment, hurt, betrayal. Where were you? He asked quietly, too quietly. I launched into my prepared excuse about inventory running late, but he cut me off. Don't. I called Sarah. She said you left at 5:30, with the pharmaceutical rep. My mouth went dry. I hadn't counted on him calling my coworkers. Hadn't thought about Sarah seeing me leave with James. Hadn't considered that my perfectly crafted lie would unravel so easily. It was just dinner, I said weakly. A work thing. Networking. Isaac laughed, but it wasn't his usual warm laugh. This was something else entirely. Networking. Right? That's why you're wearing that dress I've never seen before. That's why you're coming home smelling like wine at almost 11 p.m. That's why you've been glued to your phone for weeks, smiling at texts you think I don't notice. I felt my face getting hot. Anger bubbled up, not at him, really, but at the situation, at being caught, at having to explain myself like a teenager breaking curfew. You're making this into something it's not, I snapped. Maybe if you paid attention to me once in a while instead of that stupid car or your precious job, I wouldn't need to find someone who actually wants to have a conversation with me. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a massive mistake. Isaac's face went completely blank. Without saying a word, he stood up, grabbed his keys, and walked past me toward the door. "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my voice. He stopped but didn't turn around. "To my brother's. I need to think." "And Amanda? Check your Instagram story. You might want to delete the wine glass photo you posted 2 hours ago. Kind of ruins the whole inventory excuse." The door closed behind him with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than if he'd slammed it. I stood there in our kitchen, still in my red dress, feeling my carefully constructed world starting to crumble around me. My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Had a great time tonight. Let's do it again soon?" I deleted it without responding. Somehow I had a feeling things weren't going to be that simple anymore. The next morning at work was a nightmare. I walked in wearing yesterday's makeup and the biggest sunglasses I could find, but it didn't matter. Everyone knew. Sarah, my supposedly good work friend, had already told the whole office about seeing me leave with James. The whispers stopped when I walked into the break room. The sideways glances, the sudden interest in phone screens when I passed by. I tried texting Isaac all morning, but he wasn't responding. His brother's wife posted a picture of him having breakfast with their kids, looking tired but smiling. The comments were full of heart emojis and "we love you" messages from people who obviously knew what happened. My own social media was suspiciously quiet. The kind of quiet that means people are talking about you, just not where you can see it. James didn't come to the office that week. Or the next. I heard through office gossip that he'd requested a different territory. Apparently he had a girlfriend in Cincinnati the whole time. Yeah, that part stung. The worst part wasn't even the cold shoulders at work or the radio silence from Isaac. It was how everyone acted like I'd committed some horrible crime. Like they'd never gotten a little carried away with an innocent flirtation. Like they'd never told a white lie to their spouse. I mean, sure, maybe I shouldn't have lied about where I was. But it's not like anything actually happened with James. We didn't kiss, we didn't hook up, we just had dinner. Isaac finally came home after 4 days, but only to pack a bag. I tried to explain, to make him understand that he was overreacting. I even tried to turn it around on him. Brought up how he's been distant, how he never makes time for me anymore, how I felt neglected. He just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before and said, "You know what's funny, Amanda? I was working late to save up for our anniversary trip to Seattle, because you always talk about wanting to visit there." That shut me up pretty quick. He stayed with his brother for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of me sleeping alone in our too big bed, jumping every time my phone buzzed, hoping it was him, watching our friends slowly pick sides through social media, unfollows and party invites I stopped receiving. My mother-in-law, who used to text me daily, blocked me on Facebook. Real mature, Linda. When Isaac did come back, it wasn't to reconcile. He sat at our kitchen table, the same one where he'd waited for me that night, and said he'd found an apartment. He slid a business card across the table. "A marriage counselor. If you want to fix this," he said, "really fix it, we can try. But you need to understand what you did wrong first, and I don't think you do." I wanted to argue, wanted to point out that he wasn't perfect either, wanted to remind him of all the times he'd chosen work or that stupid car over me. But something in his voice stopped me. He sounded tired. "Done." "I never slept with him," I said quietly. "No," Isaac replied, standing up. "But you wanted to. And you lied to me. Multiple times, and you're still lying to yourself about why." He was right, but I wasn't ready to admit that. Not to him, not to myself. It was easier to be angry. Easier to focus on how everyone was overreacting. Easier to play the victim than face the fact that I'd broken something that might not be fixable. The apartment key sat on the table between us like a full stop at the end of a sentence. A tiny metal period marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. One I never thought I'd be starting. "I'll give you some time to think," he said, heading for the door. "Call the counselor if you want, ball's in your court." The door closed behind him, and I was alone again. My phone buzzed, a notification that I'd been removed from his family's group chat. Real classy, Linda. That was 2 months ago. You'd think things would have settled down by now, but somehow they've gotten worse. I didn't call the counselor. I mean, what was there to talk about? Everyone was acting like I'd committed some huge betrayal when really, I'd just had dinner with a colleague who turned out to be not so great himself. But try explaining that to people who'd already made up their minds about you. Work became unbearable. Remember that promotion I was up for? Office manager position, better pay, actual benefits? Yeah, they gave it to Sarah. Said something about professional judgment and maintaining office morale. Whatever that means. Apparently, having dinner with a pharma rep who ghosted his entire territory is somehow worse than Sarah's habit of showing up late every Monday. But who's keeping track? I tried dating apps for a while, just to show Isaac I was moving on too. But word gets around in a city this size. 3 different guys asked if I was that dental office girl before unmatching. Thanks, Sarah. Real nice. The worst part? James is fine. Totally fine. I heard he got engaged to his girlfriend in Cincinnati. His LinkedIn shows he got promoted. Meanwhile, I'm eating microwave dinners alone in an apartment that costs twice what our mortgage did, because nobody wants to rent to someone without rental history, and my credit's shot from all those shopping trips I used to take when I was stressed. Which, looking back, might have been a problem Isaac tried to talk to me about. Isaac filed for divorce last week. His lawyer sent over the paperwork while I was at work. Irreconcilable differences, it said. Like 5 years of marriage could be reduced to 2 stupid words. I wanted to call him, to try one more time to explain that he was throwing away our whole relationship over one mistake. But then I opened Instagram and saw he'd posted a picture of himself at some car show looking happier than he had in months. Some girl had commented with a heart emoji. He'd liked it. My mom keeps telling me this is a growth opportunity. Easy for her to say, she's on her 3rd marriage. But sitting here in my overpriced apartment, scrolling through photos from when things were good, I'm starting to think maybe, I could have handled things differently. Not the dinner itself, but the lying about it, the texts. The way I threw everything back in Isaac's face instead of admitting I messed up. The thing that really gets me? Last week I found a receipt in one of his old jackets when I was packing up the last of our stuff. Turns out he really was saving up for a trip. 2 weeks in Seattle, staying at that fancy hotel I'd mentioned loving when I saw it on a travel show. Tickets to that music festival I'd been dying to go to. Reservations at restaurants I'd bookmarked on Instagram. All non-refundable. All planned for the week after that stupid dinner. I tried to use that when his lawyer called. See, I wanted to say he wasn't perfect either. He was keeping secrets too. But then I realized how pathetic that would sound. Him planning a surprise vacation versus me. Well, you know. So here I am, sitting on a second-hand couch in an apartment I can barely afford, eating takeout alone on a Friday night. My Instagram followers have dropped by half. My work friends don't invite me to lunch anymore. Even my favorite coffee shop feels off limits now. It's too close to Isaac's new place and I can't handle another awkward run-in. The irony? James wasn't even all that great. Looking back, he was just there, convenient, an escape from problems I didn't want to deal with. But try telling that to Isaac or Sarah or Linda and her stupid family group chat that I'm definitely not bitter about being kicked out of. I get it, okay? I messed up. But did one dinner really deserve all this? One lie that got out of hand? Everyone acts like I'm some kind of villain when really, I'm just human. We all make mistakes. Mine just happened to blow up my entire life. Isaac still hasn't blocked me on social media. Sometimes I think that's worse than if he had. At least then I wouldn't have to see him moving on, being happy, while I'm stuck here wondering how everything fell apart so fast. But, you want to know the really messed up part? Even now, even after everything, I'm still not sure I did anything that wrong. Maybe that's why I'm telling you all this. Maybe I'm hoping someone will finally understand my side of things. Because there has to be someone out there who gets it. Right? Someone who understands that sometimes good people make bad choices, and maybe those choices shouldn't define them forever. Right?